Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your very kind introduction. I would like to thank Tirunavakar sir for joining us, and Karthik Manoharan for also joining us. I think both Tirunavakar sir and Karthik have done extensive research on Periyar and also on the movement. Maybe I may not be the right person to speak or to match up to your expectations, but I will briefly give my views, mostly intertwining it with how it altered the political economy of the state and so on and so forth. And how we could also have the event is, first we'll all speak, let's say for 10 to 15 minutes, and then we could have question and answers, and then we could have discussion from that. So if you look, who is Periyar? There's a lot of misnomer that's going around Periyar. They say he was against religion, Hinduism, or he is against Brahmins. But it's all fair. It's all unfair. Periyar was not a divider. I think that is something we need to tell people very clearly. Periyar was a unifier. He, if I have to quote him, as long as we give room for domination and the dominators, there will be worries and worried people. Poverty and pestilence will remain eternally in the country. So Periyar was very clear. He was only against the oppressor, and the oppressor kept changing. So let's say if A was suppressing B, then he will support B. If B is suppressing C and A, then he would fight against B. So that was his whole idea. So before going, Tamil Nadu is very unique in whole of India. It's the only state where development in socio-economic metrics as well as in growth has taken place. If you look, Kerala and Himachal ranks really well in socio-economic development. On the other hand, states like Gujarat and Gujarat and Maharashtra have done really well in industrial growth. But in Tamil Nadu, if you look, we have done really well. Any socio-economic metric, Tamil Nadu will be in the top 3. Any growth-related metric, Tamil Nadu will be in the top 3. How did this happen? This is because we had targeted interventions. But why couldn't other states do targeted interventions? It is very simply because there is no demand. If you look at the industrial development that Tamil Nadu has taken place, it's very equitable. If you look at Gini index, we rank the lowest. If you look at the Gini index in Gujarat or Maharashtra, it's much, much higher than Tamil Nadu. And also this growth is a concentrated growth in Gujarat and Maharashtra. Tamil Nadu is the only place where it's spread out. You don't even have a single industrial cluster. You have places like Tirupur, Sivagasi, Vellore, where all industrial development has taken place. And also TN has the highest number of entrepreneurs who belong to the backward caste, scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. It is not a coincidence that 1 in 4 Dalit entrepreneurs are located in Tamil Nadu. How much ever you could few, and from certain quarters, how much ever it's been said that there is unequal development and certain segments were not able to grow, the data says it's all completely wrong. When it comes to number of doctors or number of journalists or entrepreneurs from marginalized communities, Tamil Nadu by far is one of the best performer in whole of India. See, if Justice Party, DK and Periyar were movements that gave dignity and aspiration, creating demand. Why is dignity and aspiration very important? Because you can make rules. Anyone can come and make rules. We have Article 15. Do you think in Uttar Pradesh, in a common village, in a village, someone belonging to a tribal family will be able to go and file a complaint against a powerful person belonging to OBC community or a Brahmin community? Absolutely not. So it is not framing rules. Or let's say you create healthcare facilities. Do you think they'll be able to walk in? No. I was speaking to someone from rural Uttar Pradesh who said, we can't go to the healthcare facility because it's not allowed for us. Similarly, you can make rules for women empowerment, right? No one is stopping a woman from getting married to someone belonging to a different community, or but 90% of the time it doesn't happen because rules doesn't mean anything. It's all about how the society and the environment around them would behave. So that is why giving dignity and aspiration was very important, which is what from Justice Party onwards towards DK, and then Periyar took it up in a big way and spoke why women shouldn't be working in the household, why it is absolutely necessary that she should have equal rights as man, and by his amazing works like Penniyan, Adimiyana, he put everyone on equal footing. At the same time, he also said, Periyar also kept saying that there should be chief minister from Dalit or from scheduled tribe community. He also said that there should be more police doctors from the most oppressed communities, from OBCs. This gave aspiration. Oh, we can also aspire for it. And when Justice Party started made this rule in 1921 that women can also vote, women remarriage, even in Western countries, even in UK or in the US, universal franchisee was not a topic that was in the forefront. So this gave them aspiration as well as dignity, and that is why there when there was supply, that is from policies from parties like Justice Party and policies from DMK and AIDMK, they were takers. And for example, as per Ernesto Laclau, as Mr. Vijay Bhaskaran's also book quotes, the most difficult challenge of any movement across the world is to unite the left behind collective identities to aggregate into one popular entity and represent a collective consciousness. It has never happened anywhere. Even if you look in the US, where there's huge inequality between the Afro-American community as well as the Hispanics and several other communities, there's not a single unified voice. So I would say one of the biggest achievements of Periyar, Dravidian movement and Justice Party is also unite all the left behind horizontally, including women. He fought for every woman, right? Not just for those belonging to backward caste or other marginalized communities. And he also, as I said earlier, he also brought about through his campaign a paradigm shift in societal thought, and which made them question the societal irrationalities. Let's say you can anyway say leave the surname, you can pass a bill, but there is no necessary why people should give up their surname, right? If you look in Tamil Nadu, 99% of the population does not have surname, and it's nothing to do with the rule or a bill passed by the government. It has to do with the societal thought he brought about. I think that is very, very important, right? And another example for this, as I wrote in my article today in Times of India, that even if you look at the Congress government until 1967, it was very different to the Congress government elsewhere in India. So let's say even if for 10 years, let's say if the Dravidian government had come in 67, and not in 67 but in 77, still you would say that certain policy of the Dravidian government, maybe not aggressively, would have been pursued even by the Congress because of strong opposition from DMK and DK, as well as because of the strong demand. You know, when Rajaji brought about this reforms in education, very controversial reforms, there's huge opposition from every walks, and people went to the streets, and that is why it was immediately cancelled, and then Rajaji has to be replaced after a certain time by Kamarajar. And also when Kamarajar introduced certain reforms like midday meal scheme or PSUs favoring PSUs, state government PSUs, it was only because of demand. So I think this is again one of the most important role played by Periyar and Dravidian movement. And also when Kalaignar introduced in 1989 the Hindu Succession Act, giving women access to properties, maybe if not many women would access that, it gave them dignity and it increased their participation in labor market. That is why in Tamil Nadu we have the highest labor force participation from women, 30%, compared to the Indian average of 19%, and it's not just in urban areas but also in rural areas. And another advantage of the Dravidian movement and Periyar is our growth was able to accelerate after the 1990s. See, if you compare UP, Bihar with Tamil Nadu, UP and Tamil were nearly the same metric in the early 1960s. But after 1990s, when the economy opened up, when the rest couldn't grow fast, the rest of India couldn't grow as fast as Tamil Nadu, is only because of equitable growth that was made possible by the movement. The foundation were laid bare by the movement. The reason is very simple. India, as Christophe Geoffroy says, is a caste-based society in which the whole country would be considered as a tightly knit cylinder, and within this cylinder there are numerous castes floating around, and these castes do not interact with each other in a broader way. So when you create policies to foster growth, only one or two communities were able to grow faster and accumulate wealth. And whenever inequality happens, the growth doesn't happen faster. But only in Tamil Nadu, because everyone had access to health and education, growth happened equally across all communities, and there was certain extent there was lesser inequality, and growth was able to happen very fast. So in fact, I published a paper and in which I could see from 1990s onwards, the growth in Tamil Nadu exponentially increased. When if I would say if Indian growth was like going like this, Tamil Nadu growth from 1990s took on from here. So this is again very important, and that is why Tamil Nadu also has one of the highest GER, graduate enrollment rate, 51%, even higher than countries like Germany and the US. But you can ask me the question: why did such a growth did not happen in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar? In fact, Uttar Pradesh had Dalit chief minister, and which Tamil Nadu has not managed to achieve, and Uttar Pradesh, Bihar had movements similar to Samajwadi Party in name of Samajwadi Party, RJD, and even JDU. The reason, because as I said earlier, there was no movement like the DK, and there was no iconic figure or a symbol like Periyar to unify all caste groups and to make them all to speak single voice. That is why even if you look that even now, if you look at SP, it's associated with Yadavas, or if you look at BSP, it is one or two communities. Same thing with RJD and JDU, and that is why BJP was able to penetrate these regions and divide them. Such division is not possible because in Tamil Nadu, to more or less all the oppressed voices are united. And another thing I would also say is because of the aspirations created by the movement, democratization of the bureaucracy took place. For example, we had a very renowned administrator, Mr. Narayan, who came and spoke at DPF event, and he said that after 1967, he said the bureaucracy democratized, and people from all walks of life were in the bureaucracy. And because of that, what he said was that, let's say the service seeker, the people who seek services, and the service provider, they were from the same community, and he was able to empathize. And that empathy, and because of the empathy, service was delivered in a much efficient way. He also went on to quote that his colleague who helped in implementation of midday meal scheme in the 80s along with him, and setting up of this medical supplies corporation in states like Odisha and Uttar Pradesh. So sorry, in Tamil Nadu, he was hired by World Bank to implement these schemes in Odisha and Uttar Pradesh, and he worked there for 5 years, and he couldn't implement the scheme because there was no cooperation from the bureaucracy. So he says this democratization of the bureaucracy was very, very important achievement, and this democratization wouldn't have happened if the aspiration was not created. And he also went and said that even when COVID happened, when the senior officers or the ministers used to go and stand, the officers, the other level, lower level of bureaucracy never cooperated because they didn't empathize. They were sitting in the house and they were afraid. In Tamil Nadu, they were all going to the villages and in the towns and working because they were also part of that village ecosystem or part of the ecosystem which the majority of the people belonged. And another thing which happened also because of democratization of bureaucracy was to negate the elite bias, like Mr. Weiner, who traveled across India and said it was very wrong to set up institutes like IITs and IIMs because it favors only 1 or 2% of the population. So you put so much money, 90% of the money that you're going to put to the primary education, and then you set up IITs, IIMs. 1%, 2%, they go to the US, their community develops, but the bottom 90% were left over. But in Tamil Nadu, because aspiration from every quarters, right from the beginning, expenditure on primary education was really high. And because of that, everyone got education, and this was intertwined with also the health policies and demand for health. See, and again, freebies played a major role. Because of demand, we had investment policies called as freebies, but unfortunately, because we didn't have a lot of people writing on this, a term freebies is wrongly annotated with something that is given to people to uplift them. So P.T. Sir once said that it's not freebies, it's development for the future. Exactly, it's development for the future. Because trickle-down economics do not work in a stratified society like India. So as I said earlier, caste system. So you have so if doesn't mean that if the top 1 or 2%, like the Brahmin community or the Baniya community would become prosper, doesn't mean that the lowermost community would prosper. So you need targeted interventions. So that is what these so-called freebies played in Tamil Nadu. For example, DMK was ridiculed in all quarters for giving free color TV. But research by Brown University professors say after giving color TV, after 3 years, 4 years, this color TV coupled with cable access was able to uplift and empower women. Number of women in women folks sending their daughters to school increased by 30%. Them refusing to be beaten up by the husband increased by 40 to 50%. And those kind of things happen. And let's say because of them going to school, some of them will also go to universities and some of them will also find employment. And what will happen if they find employment? Their family would also get empowered and they will pay taxes and the money would come back. That is the case also with giving free education to a girl child or giving them free bicycle or bus passes. Let's say if they go, some of them go on to college and some of them go on to work, they're going to pay taxes, and also their daughters and children are going to have better education and better exposure and more human capital. And also if you look, when our recent chief minister's decision to give free travel for women is a masterstroke for a very simple reason, because I was speaking to my housemaid and she said now she used to spend about 1,000 rupees or 8,012 rupees every month on bus pass, and now she has that extra money and she spends that money on her children. Of course, this is going to empower her kids more. Let's say if she's not able to afford tuition, they'll be able to go to tuition, additional education, buy books, and so on and so forth. And of course, I would also like to end by speaking about the challenges. Right now, we are at a very crucial stage. As Pugal sir said, we have a movement that wants to divide, and that is directly in contravention to Dravidian movement. The federalism for which Dravidian movement, DMK, Arinyar Anna, Kalaignar, our leader MK Stalin, all fought for, is under threat. The states are under GST. The states are not getting the due share. Many of the state due share goes in the name of excise, cess, etc., etc. We have new education policy to threaten our education policy. We have NEET, which is directly in contrast with the ethos of Dravidian movement. Of course, which is also directly in controversy to the concept of merit, for which the Dravidian movement DMK fought, and also the state's financial health due to last 5-6 years of reckless spending. We don't know how much we could implement the policies of the Dravidian movement. And also we have parties like NTK, which is misleading people in form of a wrong mobilization. And the last and the foremost that is very important is we have to take it to the youth. When my father or my grandparents, what was for something for which they had to fight, access to education, dignity, these are now taken for granted, and they do not know the sufferings their parents or their forefathers stood for. So they will also have to be educated on movement, on Dravidian movement, about ethos of DMK and why this movement has to exist. And the conclusion, Dravidian movement is not a model based on hate or division of people. It is a model to unite people, majority of the people. It gives dignity to each and every person. We had this excellent and very famous political writer and a columnist to DPF called Ekal Temal Quran. And she said, the only way you could fight fascist forces and forces of division is through giving them dignity and unifying them in the concept of dignity. So in 2024, if we have to defeat the divisive forces, we'll have to unite all people under the theme of social justice and dignity. And the icon and symbol for that would be Periyar. Thank you.